planned immigration enforcement targeting Somalians in the Twin Cities.
Hungry children wind up in the hands of a Somali terrorist group.
In a heavily Somali area of Minneapolis, federal agents resorted to pepper spray.
The president calling Minnesota a hub of fraudulent activity.
The temperature in Minneapolis had dropped to 5 degrees below zero, the kind of cold that silences a city. In the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, snow clung to sidewalks and storefronts, muting footsteps and swallowing sound. Most apartments were dark, families huddled inside against the wind. But before dawn, the stillness broke as a long convoy of unmarked vehicles rolled slowly into position. 20 armored vans moved without sirens, tires crunching softly through packed snow. For the ICE and FBI tactical teams inside, the weather wasn't an obstacle. It was cover. At the corner of Cedar Avenue stood a nondescript brick building, its windows fogged, its sign modest and reassuring. It read Community Legal Defense and Immigration Services. To residents, it was a lifeline, a place to seek help with visas, court filings, and deportation fears. To federal intelligence analysts, it was something else entirely. Months of surveillance had pointed to this address as the command and control node for one of the most sophisticated fentanyl distribution networks in the Midwest. The law firm wasn't defending clients, it was coordinating poison. At 4 a.m. exactly, the operation began. A sharp command cut through the cold air, followed by a concussive blast as a breaching charge tore the reinforced steel door from its hinges. Flashbangs detonated inside, flooding the lobby with light and noise. Agents poured in, weapons raised, expecting resistance, and they found it. Not attorneys in suits, but armed sentries positioned to guard hallways and stairwells. 2 men attempted to retreat toward the back offices, but the FBI SWAT team moved faster. Within seconds, the ground floor was secured. The real shock waited below. As agents cleared the basement, they expected file rooms and storage.
The Somali community is being targeted by federal immigration forces.
And this has a number of people in the Twin Cities feeling on edge. Bill Keller is in the newsroom with what's being said both in Washington.
Instead, they found a processing lab. On conference tables beside court briefs and stamped affidavits sat brick after brick of fentanyl, wrapped, taped, and staged for distribution. Pill presses hummed quietly in a side room. Packaging materials were stacked neatly along the wall. This wasn't a stash house, it was a factory hidden behind legal privilege. The raid triggered what authorities called Operation Metro, a citywide surge aimed at dismantling the entire network. Over the next few hours, teams moved simultaneously across Minneapolis. Apartments, storefronts, warehouses, and vehicles were hit in rapid succession. By sunrise, more than 400 people were in custody. Yet the most explosive discovery wasn't the drugs. It was a safe recovered from the senior partner's office. When technicians drilled it open, they didn't find cash or jewelry. They found a blue notebook, and inside that ledger were names, badge numbers, precinct assignments, and monthly payment schedules. 28 local police officers and city officials were listed, each entry detailing services rendered, tipped off raids, missing evidence, patrol routes redirected at critical moments. The notebook was a payroll of betrayal. Minneapolis, a city long defined by its immigrant communities and progressive policies, was staring at a corruption scandal that reached into the foundations of local government. For years, Cedar Riverside had been known as Little Mogadishu, home to the largest Somali population in the United States. Most residents were refugees who had fled war and instability, building new lives through hard work and tight-knit support networks. Intelligence officials had warned, however, that criminal groups exploited this density to hide in plain sight.
You're about to have the largest Somalian. Look at their nation. Look how bad their nation is. It's not even a nation. It's just people walking around killing each other.
Sanctuary policies designed to protect the vulnerable had in this case been weaponized to shield predators. The law firm was the perfect disguise. Operating under attorney-client privilege, it deflected scrutiny and framed any investigation as an attack on the immigrant community. Activist networks, some genuine and some manipulated, were ready to mobilize at a moment's notice. Spotters tracked federal vehicles. Roadblockers practiced rapid assembly. The cartel relied on outrage as a defense mechanism, confident that protests would paralyze enforcement long enough for evidence to vanish. That morning, the speed and force of the operation shattered that strategy.
In the wake of the National Guard shooting, the Trump administration now says that they have paused immigration applications for people from 19 countries. That includes requests for green cards and U.S. citizenship.
By the time word spread through the neighborhood, suspects were already being transported to a secure federal facility outside the city. The arrests weren't aimed at street-level dealers alone. This was a strike on the white-collar architects of the operation, the fixers who laundered millions through halal markets, trucking companies, daycare centers, and nonprofits before sending profits overseas. To run a ring of this scale without interference required insurance. The Blue Ledger explained how it was bought. Residents had complained for years that 911 calls went unanswered, that patrol cars never arrived, that evidence disappeared. Now the pattern made sense. Officers on the payroll weren't merely negligent, they were active counterintelligence. They tipped off raids, arrested rivals to clear territory, and ensured shipments moved unchallenged. Badges became tools of enforcement for a cartel monopoly. As the operation unfolded, the atmosphere in Minneapolis turned volatile. Innocent families realized the law firm they trusted had been a front. The police department went into lockdown as internal affairs and federal investigators began identifying the officers named in the ledger. Trust collapsed overnight. What had seemed like isolated failures now formed a coherent picture of systemic corruption. The final challenge came as agents attempted to extract high-value suspects from the neighborhood.
When a federal task force swarmed Cuatro Milpas on Lake Street, a large crowd quickly gathered to protest what they thought was the arrest of undocumented immigrants.
Hundreds of people flooded the streets, blocking intersections and linking arms in front of armored vehicles. Snowballs hardened with ice-struck windshields. This wasn't spontaneous protest. Intelligence reports identified it as a coordinated rescue attempt triggered by a silent alarm inside the building. The goal was simple: pin the convoy until evidence could be destroyed or reclaimed. A firefight in a crowded frozen street would have been catastrophic. The tactical commander ordered restraint and deployed a non-lethal solution. From the rear of the convoy, a DHS vehicle activated a long-range acoustic device. A focused beam of sound cut through the crowd, physically painful to endure. The front line broke apart, creating a narrow corridor. Engines roared and the convoy surged forward, carrying suspects and evidence out of the hot zone. Back at Fort Snelling, forensic chemists began testing the seized narcotics. The results were chilling. This wasn't diluted street product, it was pure fentanyl pressed into pills designed to mimic legitimate prescriptions. OxyContin, Xanax, Adderall, among them were thousands of brightly colored tablets, candy-like in appearance, engineered to attract younger users. The estimated street value reached $50 million, enough to devastate entire regions. Yet the drugs were secondary to the ledger. As agents digitized its contents, they uncovered ranks, services, and timelines. Patrol officers, detectives, even a watch commander were implicated. Some had enforced cartel dominance by arresting competitors, others ensured routes were clear. The betrayal extended beyond policing. During interrogation, the firm's director, known on the street as the Professor, hinted at a higher level of protection. He claimed orders didn't originate at the precinct but at City Hall. And then the lights went out. A sudden blackout plunged the facility into darkness. Emergency generators failed. Alarms shrieked from the server room as maglocks disengaged. It wasn't an extraction attempt. It was a digital assassination. A sophisticated cyber attack launched a wiper virus aimed at erasing the evidence. Scanned ledgers, encrypted communications, years of records. For 6 critical minutes, the battle was fought in code. FBI cyber specialists severed the building's internet connection, physically cutting fiber lines. The upload stalled at 98%. When power returned, the evidence was intact. The Professor understood the message. His partners hadn't tried to save him, they had tried to erase him. He began talking. The trace led not overseas but downtown to a municipal IP address. The implication was staggering. Drug profits laundered as legal fees had been donated to political campaigns that lobbied for weaker policing and expanded sanctuary protections. The network wasn't just hiding behind policy, it was funding it. Operation Metro expanded instantly. Federal marshals moved on precincts named in the ledger. Officers arrived for roll call and left in handcuffs. And in 48 hours, 28 badges were stripped, multiple stash houses were raided, and $12 million in unwashed cash was seized from suburban homes. By the end, the numbers were historic. Over 400 arrests, $50 million in fentanyl removed, a 60% drop in supply citywide, and a law firm permanently shuttered. The political fallout had only begun. Operation Metro exposed a harsh reality. Modern cartels don't just buy guns, they buy legitimacy. They hide behind nonprofits, law degrees, and community awards. They exploit compassion and weaponize trust. This case proved that the most dangerous criminal enterprises don't lurk in alleys. They operate from offices with frosted glass and reassuring signs. The door has been forced open. The question now is how many others remain closed.